Hello, welcome back to Search Sean. This is another Chat with Sean episode, and it is a special one. It's like you see, I've got quite a few guests, and it's all around freelancing. Obviously, we get more into that topic. I think the reason I wanted to do this was because a lot of the times, you go for a job interview or just generally talking about what you do, and then are you in-house? Are you agency? And actually, some people are neither of those things. So it's good to actually see how they do it, how they operate, and all those kind of things. So first of all, I do all the intros, and we get into the topics. So we have Matt, who is the founder of Fortitude Marketing. Welcome, Matt. And we got Iva, who is a freelance SEO and content marketing specialist and conference organizer, that's including HeatCon and Belgrade SEO. And we got Laura, who is doing performance marketing at laurastrategy.com. And we have Jonathan, who is SEO and analytics consultant. And finally, we have Raquel, who is the CEO and founder of Soulful Connect. So, thank you all for joining me. Really glad we got to do this in the end. And I'm really interested in the topic because I've done a bit myself in the past, and it's not an easy thing to do. So I really hats off to all of you for doing it. We'll go one by one. I'll just follow my screen, how I see it, I guess. And the first topic is, or question, I guess, what led you into freelancing, and how did how did your early experiences shape your approach today? Eva, let's start with you.
Hi. So my journey into freelancing was kind of as a side gig. When I was working full time, I even did some freelancing things and side projects. And that was going on for a while, doing the whole 9 to 5 and then doing the side gig thing. But a year or two, or more than a year ago, I decided to move away from that and focus on doing more of my projects, and as well as a lot of the freelancing gigs I was already kind of getting or going into. So I just made the final decision. I'm gonna go this full time, and that will enable me to focus more on the projects I do, projects like HeatCon and Belgrade SEO conference, and just do a bit of also kind of digital nomading thing with travel and working. And that's been the past year and a half, I think, has been like that.
Nice. Jonathan, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think so. My background was as an agency, and I only had one job really, so as an agency for over 12 years. So I'm a bit of a weirdo in that respect, that I stayed in one place long enough, for so long, in fact. So I think for me, the simple sort of explanation was I just felt like I'd hit a bit of a glass ceiling in terms of where I was going in terms of my career. So felt for me the next logical step was to sort of pursue freelance, just to, I think, explore new opportunities and ultimately try to continue to get better. I think when you're in an agency and you get to, let's just say, a certain level in the agency, you're actually not doing as much of the SEO anymore. You're doing more of other things. And I think as I was sort of increasingly doing other things and not doing the actual thing that I really loved and enjoyed, I think freelance became really appealing. So I think for me that was sort of my that was sort of basically sealed it in my mind that was why freelancing was a good thing for me. So I decided to go freelance, I think about approximately 2 weeks before lockdown started. So it was, I think, what you call a baptism of fire.
Nice. Interesting story. And Raquel, what about yourself?
So for me, I had been working for a few companies or doing small projects while I was studying. And then I was living in South Korea at the time. I was finishing a master's degree. And I knew that when I went back home, I wanted to start freelancing right away, because that's what I always wanted to do. And I wanted the freedom, if I have to do something, if I want to go to conference, all these things, I had this freedom. So I came back and I started freelancing. I had the support from my parents. So, I didn't have to do most people have to do, have a main job and then slowly transitioning into freelancing. And yeah, I just started, and I started first with translation because my main background was translation, and then I decided to also add SEO services, and then I just continue freelancing.
Wow, nice. Laura.
That was back in Hong Kong when I was working 9 to 7 p.m. all these long hours in this very hectic city. I was living in the center of the city as well. So I thought that's enough. And I knew so many people doing business because it's really cheap. Taxes are really flexible and really low there, and everything helps you to, everything's screaming at you to become an entrepreneur in that wonderful city. You even have this really long, tall building called Invest Hong Kong, where you just go there, say, hey, I'm a freelancer, and they like, you have to do this, go to this place. All the paper thing, it takes seconds to happen there. So yeah, I guess I just got into the mood of, why not? No, right? Maybe that's my time. And then, yeah, I just knew people and started saying, hey, I want to become a freelancer. And all of a sudden, I was tripling my income, which was already quite high for me being Spanish, living in Hong Kong. And obviously, English is not my main language. So I was really happy. And yeah, I'm very thankful to that city I have.
Matt, what about yourself?
Hey, everybody. It's really interesting to hear. I think a lot of people got into freelance a similar way to me, where they were just doing it part-time on the side of a previous agency. So I kind of just started doing it on the side because I wanted to earn some extra money, and it built into something a little bit bigger. And then it got to a point where I had a decision to make because I couldn't do both alongside each other. So I was kind of lucky that when I made the transition into freelance, I already had one client that was willing to commit to me on like a retained basis. That kind of gave me the baseline that I needed and the confidence to make the jump. But yeah, I've been freelancing for the best part of 3 years now. And in the last 12 months, I've kind of transitioned from just being a solo freelancer to building Fortitude Marketing, which is now an agency, but it's a collective of freelancers. So it's not a team of employed staff. We're all freelancers in our own right. And I think that I really enjoy being a freelancer, and I kind of enjoy the people that I've met through this journey and wanted to build something with them.
Yeah, cool. No, really interesting. And I guess that kind of what you said leads us on to the next sort of topic area, because it's about how can someone with no portfolio or experience, for example, land their first client and position themselves effectively? Because I guess that's where everyone gets cold feet. You know, you're like, you know what you're talking about. You had a good career, but you're getting that first client, you have no idea how to do that, or kind of you're scared about how things will turn out and if you lose them or whatever. So yeah, Iva, what will you say about that one?
Well, I don't think I'm a good example on that, because I've like already started positioning myself while working agency side. I've already been attending events, networking, talking to people, and I already kind of had some side gigs similar to Matt, like as we're working full time. So I've just like my transition into that was easy, and my kind of like getting the clients was easier than it's for most people, because I basically already had something to start with. I didn't go like, oh, cutting it all, going from zero, fresh start. I already had something, and I used that to build upon. And most of the times, my clients have been network connections, recommendations from other freelancers as well. I've joined a couple of freelancer groups and been to some events, and there have recommendations came from that as well. Other times it's been companies I've worked with on other projects, like the conferences that decided to like go in. So it's I still haven't done the whole cold outreach thing with freelancers. I kind of need to do. I've mostly been just getting the fruits of the labor from the networking experience.
Well, that's still really good though. I mean, like you were, some really good recommendations, because it's about networking, building connections, you know, that kind of thing is like key if you're gonna even consider going down that route in the future. So yeah, so there's definitely still really good recommendations. Jonathan, what about from your point of view?
Yeah, so I kind of did it like, I guess suppose the way that everyone says you shouldn't do it. That my first week as like let's say like a freelancer, I had 0 clients. I left the agency. I wasn't for reasons I can't really go into, I wasn't really able to approach people during my like notice period. So I went in as cold as like you can be, right? So I left. Yeah, I left. I did like, I don't know, like the Alexander the Great. I could just burnt the ships on the beach and decided like, I'm all in here. There's no going back. So I think things that worked for me, like initially, and it was tough because of like COVID happening at the same time. One thing, obviously being an SEO, I do like a bit of data mining. So I made like this bonkers Google map of like, and this is before sort of everyone was working from home. I made this like bonkers Google map of every agency within like a 50-mile radius of where I lived to try and like work out where they were and if it was like commutable or basically just people to make connections with. So that was like one thing, and just try to like reach out to people, just ask if they were looking for people. So that was sort of like my first sort of stab in the dark, bearing in mind at this point I didn't really know anything. And then there was like a few like LinkedIn shout outs, and that actually like was really helpful because just people I didn't even think of like came out of the woodwork and were very supportive and offered me like a few projects. But I think, yeah, what really helped for me, especially like going in like so cold, was I joined something called the Digital Marketing Union. So that's run by someone called Daniel White. It's like a freelance, so like a paid freelance collective. So I joined that, and that was like really good because if you imagine like during lockdown when you're like completely like trapped on your own, it was just nice to be able to interact with other freelancers. And yeah, there was like was able to pick up a little bit of work through that. And that was like, I think, really transformative during that early sort of phase of just like building up a head of steam. I think that's probably like the biggest tip I'd give anyone is you just sort of got to build up that head of steam until you sort of get going. And it probably took me like 9 months until like I was like getting like, I'd say like regular work. There were like definite months like where I was like, I made like £200 a month. Like I was like, it wasn't exactly like bringing in the money, and just sort of had to keep going. And, you know, hopefully touch wood, it's worked out okay now. I'm like 5 years into that journey, but I'd say, yeah, you can do it. But my one bit of advice is like save some money. You need some money if you're going to do like the burn the ships approach. So yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my points. It's like, if you're going to go like that, you need those savings in the background because you're not going to survive too long, especially in this day and age where everything's like so expensive. Yeah, interesting. Obviously, all of you I pretty much know because of LinkedIn and other shows and stuff you've done. So getting your name out there and stuff obviously works, and you've done a bit of that in the past. Raquel, right?
So for me, my first freelance gig was a translation job, and it came through a referral. But after that, since I wanted to also like shift to the SEO sector, like opposite to Iva, for example, she said she started like in an agency and people like knew her. Nobody knew me, right? I was just like, hey, one day I was like, I'm doing SEO. So for me, at first, it was very difficult to find a client that would trust me because I had no portfolio in SEO, nothing. I started going to networking events, conferences, also doing like some marketing in LinkedIn. But yeah, it took a while. And I would also do as friends or family that had like a website. I was like, hey, do you need like, you know, SEO services? Maybe I can do it for free, you know, so I can get like some reports. But it didn't end up very well because when it's like family or friends related, there's not like a limit established, you know? So at the end, like, yeah, I couldn't use like those projects as a portfolio for me. And at the end, my first client was just, I would say, somebody that trusted me. I didn't have a lot of portfolio, but we had like a meeting and she saw that I knew what I was doing. So she gave me the opportunity, and then the project went well. I had a good testimonial that I could use, and I had like, she said she would recommend me to some people that she knew. So yeah, that's how I put like my foot in the industry.
Yeah, nice. And obviously, we're not going to have time to discuss everything around freelance today, which is a shame. But pricing is definitely, even for me, when I've done my bit of freelance in the past, pricing is tricky. How much value you put on it, how much you think they're going to be like up for paying, how much value you put up against your time. And also, do you do things at the beginning for free, like you say, to kind of prove your worth? But then if you do things just free, and then the next one you're saying, oh, and then it's so much like money, they're going to be like, but you just did that for, it's a tricky one, the value behind it. But I'm not sure we get into that today, but it's an interesting thing. Maybe we'll cover next time. But Laura, what about yourself?
Yeah, we never work for free, and we never work with family or friends. That's I learned the hard way. Yeah, my very first client was through a business association for women. In this case, in Asia, there were some women's association because they needed more support, I guess. So through that network and just talking to people in my current job, I started talking to suppliers. I was in big, huge hospitality groups, so wine companies, anyone, just they know you, so that you can just say, hey, I'm freelancing now, and it's easier than you think. And I don't suggest anyone quitting their jobs until they make the same salary or ideally double through freelancing, and then you have some. Otherwise, you start working in a desperate mode, and no one likes desperate people in any area of your life. So just try to feel confident knowing that you have this income coming, and then it makes you feel more confident with new clients. But obviously, everyone has their own situation. Sometimes you just get rid of a toxic environment and you just need some time to heal, which also I've been through that as well. I guess in marketing, it's a very demanding job for ourselves. Really.
Yeah, and there seems to be like quite a lot of groups and stuff has been mentioned that help people. Obviously, we've had a couple of panel shows with the Women in Tech SEO.
Yes.
They do a lot of great things, and yeah, it's really interesting because I think that's the thing. Like people, like it should be the case that you're earning at least somewhat near what your salary is before you kind of go, ideally. But like a lot of people want to leave their jobs sometimes because of burnout and stuff, and it's like you have to work so hard in your freelance side that and still keep up your day job, and then it's a tricky one to kind of balance both, and if you've got any sort of life as well.
That's why high ticket clients are so important. That's why for me, even in Hong Kong, with this big economy, was crucial. So I think you have to be exposed to these environments if you want high ticket clients.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Matt, what about yourself?
Yeah, so I definitely don't think I would have had the balls to like make the jump without having some kind of work lined up. But I was lucky. So an old client of the previous agency I worked for, who was probably too small for them at that stage, needed support. I spoke to my manager, and he actually said it was okay for me to work with them. There was already that connection there, so that really helped out. But I think before I made the jump into full-time freelancing, I wanted to make sure that I had like the kind of baselines in place. So similar to what John was saying, like making sure that I had like a certain amount of money like there. And then similar to what the others were saying, where, I needed to make sure I had a certain amount of money coming in. And I think the other really important thing for me was making sure that it was something I actually enjoyed doing. So like I always liked this idea of working for myself, and I thought it'd be fun. But I also knew that sometimes I like would get stressed in like high pressure situations, and the idea of like being completely responsible and in control of everything was a bit daunting at first. But honestly, since making the jump, it's been like the most freeing thing. So for me, it was literally just making sure that I had a bit of a plan in place. And I guess my other like final tip for people that are looking to go freelance would be to learn from the people around you. So even if you don't know any freelancers, maybe reach out to some on LinkedIn. A lot of people are really happy to share knowledge and to give guidance and to give tips. But I basically was just a sponge before making the jump. I freelanced part-time for about a year. Like asked people as much as I possibly could, and made sure that I was like really clear in my mind before making the jump. And it still doesn't fully prepare you, but it's definitely more helpful than going at it alone.
Yeah, great points. And we're kind of similar kind of vibe that we're going on to now. So when I've had a few chats and panel shows with recruiters, for example, in the digital marketing world, and they say a lot of the things they're looking for now are those soft skills, you know, how good you are with people and that kind of thing. And, you know, if you work in-house, especially, and an agency, there's specialist people that are going out doing the outreach and talking to clients, and you might do a bit of it, but you're not like the main person. Like a lot of the time, you're just kind of like putting in your 2 cents about your specialist area, or, you know, in the house, you're kind of just talking to people, obviously in-house as well, most of the time. So which soft skills actually matter most in freelancing, and how do they impact your success? So that's the kind of next topic area. And Eva, how do you approach that?
Well, I have been an organizational freak since I could remember, probably to do with my ADHD, I think. But yeah, for me, organizing everything, having the time management skills as well is one of like the most important skills. And I'm not saying this is an important skill for freelancers to have. This is something from my like personal side that is important for me, so I can organize my time and, you know, communication and everything. But in terms of like globally, for freelancers, really the soft skills around communication are the most important thing. Yeah, I think you have to know how to communicate with other people, as in first network, approach, outreach, whatever the situation, but also communicate expectations. I think we've all made the mistake of like having wrong expectations set with the clients, or some miscommunication with it. And it's just like, for me, the most important part of the project that I work on, and that defines the start, the middle, even the end, is how you communicate things and how you approach it. So, you know, I've never had kind of like an issue of communication since I've been in student groups at my university, and I've been an extrovert for most of my life, and communication always came so easily, so I could easily communicate what I needed and what like was needed to communicate. But I know like it's a thing that it's a problem for people to have. So kind of like my advice for people looking into the freelancing is make sure your communication with anybody in your life is like on point, I guess. Make sure you know how to communicate things, how to communicate with your thoughts properly, how to articulate them, but also on my personal side as an advice, know how to organize things as well. It's kind of like the basis of like how I do everything. I tend to super organize things. So yeah, kind of like if I had to pick the top two, it would be like organizational skills / time management as well, and the communication skills would be my top two soft skills that people should really get into, like work on if they don't already have the skills, so that they can go into the freelancing bit much easier.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably when you're first starting, especially, you're gonna naturally sort of oversell things because you're so desperate for that first client or second client, and it's only natural to like say oversell things and kind of like put yourself a bit in the shit, because you need to then deliver for probably a lot less than.
Yeah. It's a thing that I know I did it when I started first freelancing. Even though it was a side gig, I tended to like promise mountains and everything for a very low amount of money, and I just wanted to get it. And I looking back into it, I realized that I should have communicated better what I can do and what I can't do. So that is like a thing that it'll probably happen, because like Laura and I think Raquel said, you're desperate for the first client, you're desperate for the first job, and you really want to get that, so you'll agree to everything, but don't like set the boundaries straight off.
Yeah, 100%. You got to value yourself and your time. Jonathan, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'd sort of like try and encapsulate it as, I think probably like the biggest challenge for like freelancers in general is actually switching gears. So I think we're all probably really good subject matter experts. We all know our stuff. We're all really good at what we do. I think the hard thing maybe for in general is that 1 minute you're doing some actual SEO, next minute you're you're chasing a late invoice, or the next minute you're trying to write a proposal, or then you switch into like being like an internet engineer trying to fix like the broken ball band. So it is, I think, a challenge to switch between all those different contexts, and inevitably, like, we do have a lot of like plates spinning at any one time. I would say, like, I guess coming from an agency background, to a degree, I was quite fortunate that, again, where I was at that point, I had a lot of experience with particularly like sales, leading teams, things like that. So I was able to sort of take that into sort of freelancing, and it sort of helped me there. And I was, again, very fortunate, I think, probably during that 6-month fallow period that I had, of being able to like really double down on processes. I think probably that's one thing that a lot of freelancers maybe don't consider as well, is that you do need like systems in place to make your life easier, because of that having to switch context all the time. And probably, again, like, the other weird thing is dealing with paradox, that something that works for client A or person A might not work for person B. So you're constantly having to sort of really adapt and fine tune depending on really who you're dealing with. And a lot of the time that's not necessarily a client. It could be, again, all sorts of different contexts. You are running a business on your own a lot of the time, and it's hard to get your head around that. So I would sort of say, yeah, be prepared to have multiple balls in the air. And I kind of would echo what Eva said there. I think probably organization is like the one thing that I think clients are looking for and they demand, and I think that's right, is to be organized. So I would definitely focus on that. And then number 2 is like, start thinking about what processes, because processes are going to allow you to just like scale and not burn out. So yeah, those are sort of, hopefully you got a macro and micro there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, when I say we haven't got time to go over everything, but it'd be interesting to see if people actually screen to some degree, like the clients that they're going to work with, because I can, work in an agency before, like you say, they all vary in terms of demands and communication skills themselves, and kind of like just kind of difficulty levels. And, do you really want to take that on in your own personal capacity as a client? And do you like screen them in terms of just seeing perhaps early kind of warning signs that they're going to be difficult? But we probably won't have time to go into that, but it'd be interesting in future if we do. But Raquel, what about yourself?
I think mine are pretty similar. I would say, obviously, negotiation skills. You have to know how to lead a meeting with a client. When I started at first, I didn't know how to do it, so I would just jump in the call and do like a sales speech, like, I do this, I can offer this to you, blah, blah, blah. And I wouldn't like listen to my client, right? And know like their challenges, what they really need, like what their goals are. So at the end, like, you really need to know how to lead the meeting so the client is comfortable, like to tell you, like everything that they really need and really go into it. And to obviously like close the client and get the project. Also, probably communication and empathy skills. I find that sometimes clients really value that you explain the concepts to them. Like, for example, some of mine don't know anything about marketing or SEO, so they want to understand, right? Like what you're doing, what's going to help. So I've seen that when you communicate clearly with them and, explain everything, they appreciate it. And maybe probably like a analytic or strategic eye, in SEO, sometimes you've learned that a technical issue happens because of something, but when you really get into it, it's more like complicated than it was. So you really need to know how to see what the problem can be, right? Like go back and be like, okay, from the beginning, what issues could cause this, or what other, I don't know, what other issue is causing this one to appear. So you really need to have this thing of knowing like what can be the issue, because it can be really different from what you thought.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like what you said about. I think also you got to be not scared to ask for further information and clarification on things, because the worst case scenario is that you go and do a lot of work and it actually isn't what they really wanted, and you come back and then you got to redo a whole bunch of things and that kind of thing. So getting clarification, not being scared to keep asking questions and that kind of thing. And obviously not to a point where it annoys them. Be strategic about it, but also and get access to things. I mean, the little bit I've done, you need access to Search Console and things, and they may not even know what that is, but you do need things, so you're going to have to like go and request that and not be scared to keep kind of saying, look, I do actually need this if you want this piece of work done and that kind of thing. So it's interesting. It's a balance, isn't it? You don't want to annoy them, but you do need the stuff to do a good job. Laura, what do you think?
For me, I think the number one is being a people's person. I think we are not robots. There are so many freelancers out there doing the same job that we do. And the way my clients stick with me for years is because they like me. People do business with people they like. I've seen so many just being very serious with them, or just, they have their own issues. No, obviously setting your own boundaries and never be scared of walking away. They all know that. They know that I don't need them. And that's why they respect me. But they have to like your energy. Don't just call them once a month with a report and this is your invoice. You can call them on a Tuesday afternoon. Hey, I saw something that I may work for you. This is something that actually Carl Hendy said in Melbourne early this year, and I really like that. And it's something I actually do before he said that, no? Yeah, being a people's person, be nice to them. They have their own issues, and also show them that you care for their business, because it makes everything. Obviously, it has to come from a good place. You have to believe that too. You don't fake. They can see that, right? Being authentic, kind. But just try to be more than just a freelancer doing your job. Why do you go to your hairdresser? Maybe because you like chatting with her, right? They come to you for the same reason, obviously because you deliver. And the last thing is being humble enough to know what you lack or what are your needs, what you need to keep learning. I see some SEOs that I feel scared to ask them anything because they seem they know everything, right? They go to LinkedIn, they know everything. They know before you. And there's so many egos in the industry, like, hey, calm down. Probably you don't know that much, or there's something you still have to learn. So knowing this for yourself, it really helps you deliver a good job. Sorry if I'm...
No, that's a great point. And that's what I'm hearing a lot. Everyone's talking about AI is taking over. They're all going to take our jobs. They're all going to take our professions and stuff. But actually, when it comes down to it, like you say, I go to my hairdresser because I like talking to the guy and that kind of thing. It's not anyone could do the haircut he does for me. It's not the most like difficult haircut in the world, so anyone could do it. But I go there for a specific reason. Okay, the price is pretty similar to everywhere else. It's things like that. It's people and that connection and like I say, when I work with freelancers now, I like the ones that just like you say, you go away, you hear about from them once a month. They feel very like disconnected. But yeah, if you're like sending me like new things to just look at or kind of new findings, I think that would be so much more value for money, and people will see that. Matt, what about yourself?
So it's actually really difficult after everybody else to come up with something that's like different, because I kind of agree with everybody, and I had this idea at the beginning, and then you all said things that like I completely agree with, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, that's actually my main thing. No, that's my main thing. But I guess for me, and it's probably, I guess, in that communication wheelhouse would be the ability to read the room. So I think when you're a freelancer, a small business owner, you are speaking to so many different roles, so many different skill levels. So sometimes you'll be chatting to senior marketers, business owners, developers, maybe interns. It could kind of be anybody. And I think being able to communicate the same point in basically 10 different ways is something that you have to develop over time. And that can be really difficult for people that in my experience anyway, it can be quite difficult for people that come from technical SEO backgrounds who only really speak to other technical SEOs, or they maybe speak to developers, and they haven't been able to kind of distill this, this 5-pager down to one kind of core paragraph that they could pass on to the C-suite. So that's something that I had to I guess try and develop in my last role. I mean, I was involved in sales pitches in previous companies, and I've always been quite comfortable doing that, but I always wanted to make an active effort to surround myself with, people at different skill levels. And, at the beginning of my SEO journey as well, I'd annoy all my friends by telling them stuff. And when they didn't get it, I'd have to break it down in a way that was clear to people that weren't in the space. And I think that was really helpful. So, they didn't like it, but it benefited me definitely.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I started this, because I used to do a similar thing to my colleagues, and they were like, can you just start a podcast or something? Because you're kind of banging on about things. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just had like I say, I've done a numerous amount of different shows on digital marketing jobs and the job market and stuff. And that was one thing that was identified, especially with younger or junior staff, where they don't get so much face-to-face time or whatever with clients. So their skills with communication and stuff isn't as developed as some others. And that's a clear thing. Like when they're doing interview processes with them, they can see that, so something, even though it's uncomfortable, even if you're starting at junior level, whatever, or when you've got that experience, do put yourself out there. I used to hate it. I'm not going to lie, especially when the client was going to be shouting down the phone. I remember my first day, they gave me this client to talk to, and he was really angry because things weren't going the way he wanted. And my first experience of talking to a client down the phone in the agency was literally him shouting down the phone about how crap the person before me was. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fun experience going forward. And it did. I mean, it got better, but he was just that kind of person, I guess. But it was an interesting one. So I've highlighted, there's so much more we can go through, but I've highlighted 2 topics that we should probably finish on because, well, they're interesting and we touched upon them a bit. How do you protect your mental health while dealing with uncertainty, comparison, and client pressures in freelancing? I'm sure this is everyone would want to hear about this. So, Iva, how do you deal with that?
Well, a few mental breakdowns later, you get by. All jokes aside, no, it's really a difficult thing to handle, especially when you have if you have a situation when you have one big client that you're depending on, he cancels, or when you have few medium-sized clients that kind of cancel, you tend to have a situation when you're left with nothing, when you know that it's going to be uncertain for the next month. It's really difficult to handle. And yeah, definitely the first time it happens, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a bit of mental breakdowns, a bit of depression, but it's you get kind of get through it. Once you get through it, the next time it happens, you're more grounded and more prepared to do so. I try to I myself try to be okay, 1, 2, 3, let's take a step back and see what we can do. Try to relax. If it's getting too stressful, take some time off. If it's clients, a lot of clients messaging at the same time, requesting a lot of things, also take a break. I usually like to when I feel overwhelmed or when I have a situation where I'm faced with this kind of uncertainty in the future, I tend to just as my boyfriend once put it, very lovely, and he's gonna be so happy I'm quoting him, a bit of luxury in a couple of minutes will help you manage it. So I tend to finish what I have to finish and just take some time off, to either go out, treat myself on a lunch, or just go for a spa thing. So it's really important to balance it out. So whenever a situation that might cause a bad situation that happens to you that will cause you to be very panicky, just take a step back, get out of that box, zone, whatever you want to put it, and just step away from it and try to get away from it. Go out, go somewhere, go for a walk if it's suitable for you, go for a spa day, go for a run, go for a swim, whatever makes you feel good. Get some like adrenaline, some happiness into you, and then come back to it and see how you can do it. And as freelancers, and I think we already like the 5 of us kind of like did catch on this. It's really hard to get out of the house and do some activity and do something for yourself. And probably the 5 of us are going to be like preaching, go out and have something, but we're failing at that. And most freelancers are failing at that a lot of the times. But it is really important to have a life outside of freelancing. It's really important to have something, whether it's a sport, whether it's an animal as well, pets, you help with that, whether it's just like an activity, something that you have booked in, whatever it is, just have it. Have some detox time, have some like wellness time, whatever. Just it's really important for mental health and for like avoiding burnout and avoiding mental breakdowns and everything, to just have something that keeps you going and something that gets you out of the house, gets you into something. Even if it's getting those steps in or just doing something else, whatever. But it's really, really important to have something or someone or some like animal, whatever, to have with you, to have something when you like, because this isn't a 9-to-5 job, so you don't like measure it. Sometimes you'll be working for like 12 hours. Sometimes you'll be working for 2 hours, hopefully. So, it's imbalance kind of thing. You don't have set hours. You're working all the time, but don't do that. Just step aside from it and do something for yourself. Do some kind of activity, whatever, just to be out of it and just to have something else.
Yeah, I've had Ursula Capel on recently, and we talked about sort of just dealing with that kind of thing, burnout and those sort of topics. And yeah, just literally, like you say, taking 10 minutes out of your day, even if you think you got a lot going on, just take a 10-minute walk or something, and the amount of clarity that will come and clear your head, and sort of none of these things are gonna like end the earth. It's not life ending. It's not like when you actually break it down, it's like easily sort of repairable if you just do the right steps and actions and not hastily make a decision. I'm sure like most people like me, when I do things like quickly, I don't really think about it. It's usually a really bad decision, and like it messes things up further. So sometimes just take a step back, and cool. Jonathan, what about yourself?
Yeah, I would like frame it as like SEO is like, it's like flying a plane sometimes. Sorry, not SEO, sorry, being a freelancer. It's like flying a plane. It's lots of like constant micro corrections, right? You think you're flying in like this straight line, but the reality is like if you take your hand off the controls, right, the plane's going to like veer off and crash. So that for me is just recognizing that things are never going to be plain sailing, or there's always going to be a thing that like happens. And I think like Sod's law, it always happens like at the point where you don't want it to happen. So I think in terms of like dealing with that sort of things that have helped me is, number one, having a routine. For me, like a routine is like super important, and part of that is I definitely need to be outside at some point during the day. And again, for our sort of foreign listeners, I guess, is I'm in the UK. There's not much sun at this time of year, so like today actually you've got quite decent weather, so I'm going to make sure that I'm going out at lunchtime to get some vitamin D. That's like super obvious tip, and I like to have like a bit of a structure, and I think the structure is like super important at the end of the day. Have like a routine at the end of the day. I know different people, some people are like early risers, some people are night owls, but however you want to stop, make sure that you have like that routine for when you choose to stop. I think, again, being freelance allows you to play to your strengths in terms of what routine works for you there. So think about your routine. And then probably like number 2 is like, just learn to recognize, I think, things like toxic thoughts. I think that's like super important. I think as like freelancers, we have this like, you will like, recognize that things like comparisons are I think particularly bad at times. Like if you start comparing yourself to like other people, like just stuff that's on socials as well. So just like learn to take a step back from that. And yeah, I think like arms race dynamics as well. That's like one of my like faves to like point out, is just like don't get sucked into stuff like that. So I think like learning to recognize that. Obviously I'm an SEO, right? So bit of Dunning-Kruger here, so I don't want to like start pretending like I'm sort of some amateur psychologist, but like I think things that you can do there that's practical is find a safe space. So we talked about communities. I'm a member of the Digital Marketing Union. We talked about Women in Tech SEO. So like they're like safe spaces. In the DMU, we have this channel called Rants. So if you need a rant, you can rant, and it's a safe place. I know that if I rant in there, no one's going to share it. So that's like knowing that is like really helpful. And then there's like other things like I can recommend the SEO Mindset podcast. I would like definitely like recommend that. Like actually people that are definitely more qualified than me to talk about these subjects in terms of like dealing with like your feelings, your emotions. And there's like another really good like YouTube channel I follow. It's called like The School of Life. That's like really good. That has like lots of, I guess, videos on like just helping you be more aware of like how you're feeling and like dealing with like whatever life throws you in your way. So it is a challenge as a freelancer, because like a lot of the time you are on your own. I personally quite like it, but it's not for everyone. So it's worth sort of pointing that out. So it's like kind of everything in life, you have like this autonomy, this control, but at the same time there is unfortunately like a bit of a trade-off there. And the trade-off there might be at times like being able to interact with other people, not being in an office. But I've definitely seen like people get around that by, you know, going and co-working, things like that. So for every problem, there's a solution. So yeah, just think about really what you need to function at your best.
Yeah, no, great. And some good recommendations there. I think, you know, even when this is still like this hobby of mine, it's good fun, but even when you go on socials and you do some amazing other shows like this, and you're just like, you know, you do start comparing yourself, you know, and even just see your day-to-day job, you're going to compare yourself. But, you know, I just try and appreciate what they're doing and being happy for them. They're having success. You know, I think that's, you know, definitely something like a mindset for me, rather being really kind of jealous or anything. Just be happy that they're having success. And also bearing in mind that it's social media, and most of the time you do see like just the good things of life. Usually, you know, most people just post the really positive stuff about what's going on in their life and their career. There's a lot of other shit in the background that you don't see, and some people are totally transparent and really good with that kind of thing, which is like nice to see, I guess, in a way that they're transparent. But yeah, it's definitely going to be whatever you work in, because of the world we live in with social media, that comparison things just is naturally going to be there for every element of life, I guess. So yeah. Raquel, what about yourself?
So I think, me personally, your mental health improves the longer that you freelance. As Jonathan said, like things happen, and at the end you have to be in peace with yourself, you know, and don't worry that much. When I started, for example, I would take it very badly when a client would say, "Oh, we don't want to proceed with you. We don't want to work with you." I always thought, "Oh, maybe I did a bad job. Maybe I didn't like express myself well." It took me 3 years, but now I just don't take it personally. I just know like there was some reasons behind, you know, and I just remind myself of my journey and how long I've come, like all my success that I've achieved, and I don't take it like personally. I don't like ruin my day. Or another thing also, when you are starting, you want to go the extra mile with your client, right? You want to keep them happy. So sometimes if they ask you like a last minute thing, you're gonna like rush and do it. And even if that means you're gonna spend like all your night working on it, or if they want you to reply to an email, you're gonna rush and reply to the email. So at the end you like get burned out, right? And it's not something sustainable. So I just you just have to learn like this life work balance and learn to say no, and this can wait for tomorrow, like clients are going to understand at the end. And what I do when I'm really stressed, for me, what works best is going for a walk, just going for a walk myself, getting some fresh air. Or even like my parents are freelancers too. So sometimes when I don't know if I did something right, or if or a situation, I just ask them for advice, because sometimes they've gone through it too, and they can understand, they can like give me like wonderful advice or their point of view. And even like as Eva said, like if you have pets, that also works wonderfully. Sometimes you just need to, relax, like wind down and go pet your cat, and you're good again. Your mood is boosted. So yeah, that's what I do nowadays, and it works for me.
Yeah, great insights. Laura, what about yourself?
I took some notes while they were talking. I think the first thing is understanding that any toxic client is worth your mental health. Learning how to fire clients was a huge thing for me. I haven't done that much, but any toxic boss is worth your mental health, even if it costs you to earn less money. So starting from that, I think knowing yourself, what makes you happy. I think we live in a very lonely world. Even if you live with your partner, you need to see other people. We are social animals. That's the thing that differentiates us from animals, really, that we need to socialize. Some cultures, like Spanish people, we have a lot of terras for a reason. We need to talk maybe more than other countries. I don't know, but knowing this and moving your body, I think a lot of traumas get stuck in your body. So, for example, if you take some dancing classes, it will help you to unlock all these things, and then meeting people. So finding activities, forcing yourself, even with this cold winter, to get out as much as you can, but to see people. Otherwise, life can get pretty lonely because we see our movies with the same laptop that we've been working the whole day. We only talk to one person. That's a really sad life if we think about it, right? Growing up in the 90s and 2000s, we were always outside with the bikes, using our imagination. So it's really sad that there's no one on the streets these days. And before, I was so looking forward to go out and just imagine myself as being this superhero. I thought I was like a superwoman with a bike, and I was 5 or 7, right, years old. So, and then if I feel really down, obviously I cry myself. I like to be a bit dramatic, but then I like to listen to these TED Talks, motivating talks, resilience, of these stories that really lift you up. And something that has worked wonders for me is all the manifesting vision boards. You need to train your subconscious mind. Where do you want to go? If they say it's like going to an airport and say, I want to go somewhere. Okay, I want to go somewhere hot. But if you are more specific, I want to go to Mexico. Well, I really want to go to Mexico anyway. Tulum, to this specific beach club. Then you train your subconscious to get there, right? How much you want to make. For me, if I train my brain in numbers, I make that. If I say, oh, I want to make this amount, and I visualize, and obviously I work for it, but I have a direction, it's easier for me to achieve that goal. So that helps my mental health as well, because I feel I'm in control somehow with this instability that sometimes we are in, because some clients, their business don't work. You can be responsible for their business, so all of a sudden they have to shut down something, and then you need to reorganize yourself. But if you know where you're going, it's sort of easier to navigate.
Yeah, so many good points. I think the thing about, like you said, Raquel, as well, like any partnership in your life, if it becomes toxic or isn't benefiting you in any way, life's too short to keep those toxic relationships. There's not any value keeping those intact. You might as well just disconnect from any sort of toxic relationship in your life, because it's just not worth it. And like you say, manifestation, that's definitely the case. Like, you're from a very early age, you're just being, you start off as a clean slate, and you're digesting stuff from around you, the environment you're in, what you read, what you watch. And it's the same now. So if you can train your brain to think about the right things, the right focus on the right goals and objectives, there's nothing it being proven time and time again by like so many people in the world that anything can be achieved if you put your mind to it. So, you know, why not? And why shouldn't it be you? Why should you just leave it for like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever? Like they're nothing else different to any of us, really. So yeah, I'll stop going on. We're running out of time. But Matt, what about yourself?
So I've written so many things down. I think there's so many plates that you're balancing as a freelancer. There's a lot of stress coming from different places. For me, like I had a really weird system that I kind of set up at the beginning to motivate myself. I'd call it toxic motivation now, looking back, and it's not something that I deploy anymore. But I kind of grew up being really demotivated at school, and I never really put the effort in, never really got good grades, and as a result kind of built up this belief that I was never going to be able to do anything that was like technical or like difficult. So when I did start landing clients at the beginning, I kind of had to like install this mindset, like I had to apply a lot of pressure on myself and basically say that, like, you know, if you don't put the work in, if you don't stick to a schedule, if you don't do this, then it's going to fail. And that helped me at the beginning because I kept telling myself, like, you know, if you slip up, then you're going to fail. And it forced me to kind of like commit to some kind of structure. But, you know, while it was helpful at the beginning, after a while, like that kind of mentality is really bad because it kind of meant that I was in a place where I couldn't even enjoy the wins because I was constantly telling myself, well, you know, it's going to fail if you like, you know, lighten up a little bit, or if you like don't continue like pushing the pedal. So I kind of had to like train myself out of that, and that just came through experience. It just came through like repetition, like proving to myself that, you know, I can do this, and it doesn't matter if I want to take a Friday off or if I want to be a bit more flexible, because one of the biggest benefits of being freelance is that you can obviously choose your own working hours and your own times, and that's something that I wasn't really getting the value of at the beginning. So yeah, I like my way of coping with like all the different stresses and to like you know, set myself on a good path was to actually force myself into some weird strict routine that was similar to what it was like in previous jobs. So that was my kind of weird coping mechanism at the beginning to deal with the stress, and got much better habits for it now. And I think something that I've learned is that we're basically all capable of doing this. You know, it's not rocket science. It's just small, consistent actions, you know, towards the things that you want to do, and you will get there. And now that I've seen it, like, you know, with a number of different things that I wanted to achieve, I've got that validation, and it makes it a lot easier for me to not have that same kind of like pressure. But yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult because different people cope with it in different ways. And yeah, like I said, I kind of had to like force some kind of like framework in there. But if I was giving advice to myself at the beginning, I would just say you definitely don't need to do that. Just set up a plan, like, you know, commit to some actions in the background, make sure you're taking those steps towards it, and yeah, plan it out like you would a strategy of a client instead of forcing yourself into something. I feel that's a really weird angle. I wanted to bring something unique, but it sounds really heavy.
And it's good. I mean, I think it is important that you celebrate your wins. You know, I think so many times, like, I've got this mentality, you're like, yeah, that's nice, but I can't guarantee my next win, so I need to make sure that happens. But in fact, like, that's not right mentality. Probably, you know, you need to celebrate those wins because, you know, why not? You've done the hard work, so why not celebrate it a bit? Even if it's just having a sweet that you like, or watching something that you enjoy, or something. I don't know, but yeah, just embrace it. I don't know. The time's ticking on, so I don't know if people have to jump, or we can quickly squeeze in one more, but I don't want to press anyone too much.
I just want to add after what he said. I want to let him know.
I made that sound so depressing, but I'm actually in a much better place now. No, it wasn't a bad place of it, and I think a lot of it, yeah, 100% committing to those consistent actions and recognizing the wins, like Sean said, like actually taking a step back and acknowledging that things are going much better than they were before. But yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys. And this is it, like the community, especially in SEO, like everybody's actually really supportive as well.
I think that's super important. Like my tip is just like create a folder on your phone or a win box, right? And even if you have to put the win, I don't know, email folder, put the wins in, or I know people that have a win box and just like write on a piece of paper, like today's win, it was X, or I just want to get better 1% every day. Sometimes that's like something really shitty, but at least I feel like I've got the win in for the day.
Oh, actually, I had a great. Sorry, Sean. Just one thing. I had a grateful journal where every day I would write 3 things I'm grateful for, things that I need to let go, and things I need to work on. Such a great exercise. If you guys can do it weekly, oh my God, personal and professional, really works wonders.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think there's apps and stuff to do as well. But yeah, awesome. Okay, we'll just finish off. If we can all answer this quickly, and then I'll let you all go. That'd be awesome. But in terms of we talked about it before, the pricing models, how do you lay that out, and how do you prove show your value in that sense when you set out those prices? So yeah, Eva, how do you do that?
I'll be the typical SEO and say it depends. I have there's the per project based, per hour based, per day based. I've gone through them all, and they all work and don't work with different types of projects. So my advice is always see how many hours that job will take away from you, calculate 2 more extra just in case, and make a price towards that. But also sometimes it's better to have an hourly gig. Sometimes it's best to have a per project payment type. Sometimes a monthly fixed amount. It really, really does depend on how you negotiate things, how you set things with the client, and what the project actually is. Because I do SEO, content, social. I also do a bit of website management. They're all different kinds of things. And the industries I work with are all different. So yeah, if you're looking to have everything per project based, structured so that you know how many hours that project will take away from you, add 2 or 3 more hours just in case, and price it as that. Otherwise, just feel the territory and see what pricing will work best. And don't be afraid to, if you see that the pricing model that you currently have is not actually working once you started it, to change it. And afterwards, it's really important to if you see if it's not working, change the pricing model with communicate with the client.
Yeah, fantastic. Jonathan, how do you do?
So when I started, this is, I think, something I was especially green in. So I learned a lot along the way. One thing that really helped, this is more coincidence, when it came out, there's a really good ebook that was launched by another freelancer called Tom Hurst, called Pricing Freelance Projects. I'll put a link in the chat. But that was really helpful, just a primer on what your options are in a bit more detail. So I think it's around $40. It's a good investment, because you're going to make more than $40 back really quickly. So in terms of how I work, I tend to work on fixed scope projects. And what I want to do is I use value-based pricing, because the time it takes me to something shouldn't be reflected in the price, right? So if I can do keyword research, I'm literally just making this up, but if I can do a keyword research in an hour because I'm really good at data and systems, I shouldn't be charging for an hour's work. So try to charge based on the value of the project, which is then roughly proportional, obviously, to things like the time I know that it's going to take in and the complexity. I think the really hard thing is, again, is doing proposals so you know what to charge, and treating it like an iceberg in terms of stuff known knowns, and there's the unknowns, which inevitably cause scope creep. So probably the biggest tip I have there is for whenever you do a proposal, is add a not in scope line. So I tend to add in, these are the things that are not in scope to help me price properly. So then when someone says, can you do this thing? I can say no, because it's not in scope, and you get paid fairly for your efforts. So that's sort of one thing I do there. And then I just sort of do, sounds a bit project management me, but I do what's called a RAID log, which is risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies. So real super example there. If there's some obvious things that are already broken on the website, I don't know, you've no indexed the site, that's going in the issues straight up, because if they can't fix it, I'm managing the risk up front. So basically any project I'm trying to do is about managing risk and to de-risk the project. And that's then reflected ultimately in my pricing model. So I try to be upfront with as much detail as possible without actually doing the work, because this is the next thing where as freelancers we get stitched up is, oh, can you just do like a free strategy or something like that? And yeah, so I would say there, like, don't be afraid to charge for like pre-projects, for like actually doing discovery work. So if the prospect comes to you and you know they're not prepared to give you the information, or they don't know what the problem is, do some discovery to find out the diagnostics as well and charge for that accordingly. But for me, it tends to be just fixed price projects with notable exceptions, which Eva sort of ran through. But that's for me is like really just getting pricing by value, not at like an hourly rate, because I think hourly charging is definitely lose for everyone.
Yeah, really, really interesting points. I think that's when I have, like, say, for example, work with freelancers on Fiverr, for example, the ones that are very clear on what this covers and what this doesn't cover, it makes it very easy for me to work with. And yeah, I think, like, say, the pre-work stuff is a very good thing. I think if they're not really interested in doing that, then how serious are they about the project? And also, like, yeah, if you set yourself quite cheaply at the start, then they're gonna say, "Oh, can you just do this free thing here? Can you do this for?" You're gonna be setting yourself up for failure. Yeah, good points, Raquel.
Okay, so I think the pricing model can change depending on the type of work that you do. For example, if it's translation work, we will price it per word or character, or if it's like an SEO content writing gig, we will price it by article, for example. But I think like what worked for me best was when you are starting your freelance journey, you don't know how long a task is going to take you. So I can say you can try going by hourly pricing, but eventually you should be charging by project, because you should get like what you deserve for the value that you are giving, right? Because you have to think like the longer you do something, the better you are at it, the quicker you are, right? So it doesn't make sense that because you're quicker, now you're getting paid less. So yeah, I think the best way to go is at the end price per project. And I always recommend adding like a buffer, because sometimes unexpected things happen. And if you already like gave that price, you know, it doesn't look good if you are like adding an extra after it to the client. So yeah, always take into consideration that things can happen and get some buffer, or even like tools that you have to use, you know, all those things.
Yeah, makes sense. No.
Yeah, my number one advice is run away from cheap clients. Not cheap clients in all senses, not just because they sometimes they make a lot of money, but they are like cheap people. Run away from them. They will never give you what you want, and it will always be a nightmare. Be very specific with how many calls, emails, and meetings that your fee involves. If they want to call you every day or every week, then you have to let them know that they're going to be charged for that, and then they're going to let you do your work. So I like to prove my value. I like to start with a fair price that for me makes sense. Obviously, I adjust the price depending on the market. If it's America, US, Australia is way higher than Spain. That's why I try to not work too much with Spain at the same time, right? Because I'm doing the same work, really. So I like to prove my value. So I like to start with a fair price that they're happy with. That for me is not too cheap. But then I say, hey, within 3 to 6 months, when I know that they're going to start seeing results, let's review that. And then when I review, I add what I consider is fair for us. And also I get a lot of referrals. So the way I've been growing is through referrals. So I'm very careful with how much I'm charging to the person who's referring me, because obviously they're going to talk. So yeah. And also another thing I like is to try to charge as much you think they can pay. Do some research. If I'm doing PPC and I'm bringing you all this business in, am I going to charge percentage by ad spend, or just a flat fee. So all these things to consider, and definitely not by hour, right, by project, or if they want to charge you if they want to pay you by hour, then obviously you charge 3 hours for something that you've done in half an hour, because the value probably is worth these 3 hours. So make sure that you feel happy with what you're getting paid. Otherwise, it's not worth it, and then find something better. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, we'll finish off now. Awesome. Matt, how about yourself?
Okay, cool. So I'm going to be quick because I know the time's running out. So how I price myself is very similar to Jonathan. So it's value-based pricing, very similar to most of the group, really. So I will sit down with a client and I'll work out roughly what I think it's worth in terms of the value that can be added. So, we'll work out what the average order value is potentially, how much business they're currently bringing in, how much, traffic. I might actually come up with a bit of a forecasting plan. It's not something I do for every client, and I don't need to do that to work out the value, but completely agree that if you can bring them, I don't know, if you're working with so for me, I work with a lot of manufacturing businesses. I'm working with a large manufacturing business, and I was able to bring them an extra £20,000 from an hour's worth of time. Doesn't make sense to only charge them for that, like 60 quid or whatever it is. And now that I've transitioned into being a bit of a freelance collective, I'll ask each person in their dedicated channels what it is that they would like to charge for their portion of the project, and then we'll go forward to the client with a combined fee, and I'll normally add a bit of a margin on top for the project management and the account management. Boom, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. No, it's really interesting. I'm sure I'd love to get into all this further down the line with all of you, but we've got through a lot, so I really, really appreciate all your time. And yeah, thanks again. I'll let you all go.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.